Daniel had a habit that slowly drained his energy. He explained himself to everyone, at work, to friends, to strangers, even when no explanation was needed. One evening, after another long day of defending his choices, he sat alone in his small apartment and felt something heavy inside his chest. Not sadness, not anger, exhaustion. He wondered why peace felt so far away, even though he was doing his best to please everyone. That night, without knowing it, Daniel stood at the edge of a realization that would change his life forever. Sometimes, the greatest prison has no walls, only words we feel forced to say. The next morning, Daniel paid attention to something he had never questioned before. Every time he spoke, he watched people's faces. Were they approving? Were they judging? He realized he wasn't talking to share. He was talking to defend himself, defending his dreams, defending his decisions, defending who he was. At lunch, when a colleague questioned his choices, Daniel opened his mouth to explain, then stopped. For the first time, he felt how automatic his need to justify had become, and a strange thought crossed his mind. What if I don't owe everyone an explanation? That single thought unsettled him more than any criticism ever had. That afternoon, Daniel decided to try something small. When a friend questioned his plans, he listened and said nothing more than, "That's my choice." No long explanation, no defense, no apology. The silence felt uncomfortable, almost dangerous. His heart raced as if he had broken an unwritten rule. But something unexpected happened. The conversation moved on. The world did not collapse. No one attacked him. For the first time in years, Daniel felt a quiet sense of relief, and he realized something powerful. Most people don't need your explanations, only your permission to doubt themselves. Daniel quickly learned that silence has a price. Some people became uncomfortable when he stopped explaining himself. They asked more questions. They pushed harder. Why? But don't you think, explain yourself? Daniel felt the old reflex rising inside him, the urge to justify, to prove, to calm everyone. But this time, he noticed something else. Their discomfort wasn't about him, it was about losing control. By not explaining, he had taken back something he didn't know he had given away, his authority over his own life. And deep down he knew, growth always meets resistance before it brings peace. Something subtle began to change. Daniel noticed that when he stopped justifying himself, he started listening to his own voice more clearly. Not the voice of fear, not the voice of approval, his real voice. People still had opinions, they always would, but those opinions no longer decided his worth. One evening, looking at his reflection, Daniel understood a quiet truth. The moment you stop explaining yourself, you start respecting yourself. And self-respect, once awakened, refuses to go back to sleep. Daniel's biggest test didn't come from strangers, it came from someone close. When a family member questioned his decisions, the pressure felt heavier than ever. This time, the stakes were emotional. He felt the old guilt creeping in, the fear of disappointing, the need to be understood. For a moment, he almost gave in. Then he remembered how exhausted he used to feel after every explanation. So he breathed and simply said, "I'm at peace with my choice." The room fell silent. And in that silence, Daniel felt stronger than any argument could ever make him. When Daniel stopped explaining himself, something unexpected happened. Some people drifted away, not with anger, just distance. Others stayed. They didn't demand reasons, they didn't push, they listened. Daniel began to see a clear pattern. Those who respected him never needed explanations. Those who demanded them often didn't respect his boundaries. This realization was painful, but freeing, because he finally understood. The people meant for your life won't ask you to betray yourself to keep them. For the first time in a long while, Daniel felt a deep, unfamiliar calm. It wasn't excitement, it wasn't confidence built on praise. It was silence inside his mind. Without constantly explaining himself, his thoughts became clearer. His decisions felt lighter. His days felt less crowded. He noticed how much energy he had been wasting trying to convince people who were never meant to understand him. One evening, walking alone under the fading city lights, Daniel smiled softly. He realized something powerful. Peace doesn't come from being understood by everyone. It comes from understanding yourself. And that kind of peace doesn't need permission. Daniel no longer reacted the way he used to. When questions came, he didn't rush to answer. When doubt appeared, he didn't panic. He had become unavailable to judgment, to pressure, to unnecessary explanations. This didn't make him cold, it made him grounded. People sensed the difference. Some tried to test it, others respected it instantly. And Daniel understood a powerful truth. When you stop justifying yourself, you teach people how to treat you. From that day on, his presence spoke louder than his words ever did. Daniel reflected on his past. Every explanation had a cost: time, energy, self-trust. He saw how often he had abandoned his intuition just to feel accepted, how many times he had shrunk himself to stay comfortable for others. The truth was simple, yet uncomfortable. Not everyone deserves access to your reasons. Some people ask questions to understand, others ask to control. Once Daniel saw the difference, he never wasted his breath the same way again. One quiet morning, Daniel made a promise to himself. He would no longer betray his peace for approval. He would no longer explain his life to people who weren't living it. This choice felt lonely at first, but it also felt honest. For the first time, Daniel wasn't asking the world for permission to be himself. He was giving himself that permission. And in that moment, he understood. Self-respect begins the day you stop negotiating your worth. People started treating Daniel differently, not because he spoke louder, but because he spoke less. There was a calm authority in the way he walked, listened, and responded. He no longer rushed to fill silence. He allowed it to work for him. Some felt inspired, others felt uncomfortable. But Daniel had stopped adjusting himself to be understood. He finally understood this. When you respect yourself, the world adjusts or steps aside. Daniel realized his journey wasn't just about him anymore. By stopping his constant explanations, he had unknowingly given others permission to do the same. Friends began speaking with more clarity. Colleagues stopped over-justifying their choices. Without preaching, without advice, he became an example. He understood then that true confidence is quiet. It doesn't convince, it doesn't chase approval. And the lesson was clear. You don't need to explain your path to people who aren't walking it. One evening, Daniel was invited to a gathering he would have once dreaded. The questions came, as expected: subtle judgments, hidden doubts, polite curiosity. This time, something was different. He listened calmly, answered simply, and refused to carry emotions that weren't his. No long stories, no self-defense. As the night went on, Daniel felt lighter with every interaction. It was as if invisible chains were falling away, one by one. Walking home under the quiet sky, he stopped and breathed deeply. He finally understood what freedom felt like. Freedom is not being understood. Freedom is no longer needing to be. Daniel's transformation wasn't loud. It didn't come with applause or approval. It came with peace. He stopped explaining his life and started living it. Now the question is no longer about Daniel, it's about you. How much energy are you wasting trying to be understood by everyone? How many times have you explained yourself to people who never truly listened? Remember this: you don't owe the world an explanation for choosing yourself. If this story spoke to you, take one step today. Pause before you justify. Choose silence over defense. Choose self-respect over approval. And if this message resonated with you, share it with someone who needs it. Like this story and follow for more stories that change lives. Your peace begins the moment you stop explaining.